Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
War broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought back, but they were defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. The great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Happy Michaelmas. This text from chapter 12 of Revelation is a passionate, stirring text, right? It's drawing together mythology from ancient Babylonia, Egypt, Greece, and blending it with apocalyptic literature from the Hebrew Bible, especially from the book of Daniel. And Revelation is using these mythic and apocalyptic images to do what apocalyptic literature does, to draw back the curtain and reveal the spiritual reality that can be so hard to see in the world in which we live. John of Patmos wants his audience to understand that they are part of a great cosmic battle of good versus evil, and that the pain and the persecution that they are experiencing is just one small part of the larger war God is raging. He wants them to know that in the end, evil will be cast down, goodness will triumph, and love and mercy will overcome hatred and judgment. All of this is why our parish has developed this tradition of celebrating the end of our stewardship campaign by transferring the feast of St. Michael and all angels to the nearest Sunday, to remind ourselves that we are part of something so large, so important. John of Patmos, exiled on an island during a vicious persecution of Christians, is trying to encourage his fellow believers that even though it doesn't look like good is winning, God will triumph in the end. And even the small things they do, gathering for worship, caring for the poor, bringing the marginalized into their community, each act is a small blow against the powers of darkness. And then, of course, in the Hebrew Bible reading, we are given another deeply inspiring, rousing, fantastical text. We get the story of Jeremiah engaging in a real estate transaction. I mean, as you were reading along, I could tell you were all on the edge of your seats with gripping lines like, I signed the deed, sealed it, got witnesses, and weighed the money on the scales. Then I took the sealed deed of purchase containing the terms of... Sorry, I fell asleep for a moment there. The terms and conditions in the open copy, and I gave the deed. I gave the deed of purchase to Baruch, son of Neriah, son of Mahaseah. You know, good thing it was Baruch, son of Nehiah, because that other Baruch, he's worthless when it comes to real estate. Absolutely. Now, I know this text of Jeremiah seems a bit on the dry side of things, not the most inspiring thing perhaps you've ever heard or listened to or read in church. But trust me, you need to understand the context of this real estate transaction to understand what's going on. So we've been hearing from Jeremiah for the past few weeks now in the readings from the Hebrew Bible. If you're not familiar with Jeremiah, though, he's one of the major prophets, someone who was active in the 6th century during the eventual conquest and exile of the southern nation of Judah. You may remember, for example, from a few weeks ago, the story of Jeremiah's visit to the potter's house, where he sees the potter forming something with clay, only to notice a defect. And the potter crushes the clay down and begins forming it once more. So it is with you, Jeremiah declared. And he explained that if God saw sin and corruption in the creation of Israel, he could likewise crush it and work to reform it anew into something that was according to his purposes for them. And as you imagine, this was not a very popular message. Right? I mean, because particularly the political and religious leadership of Jeremiah's time told the people, everything's fine, it's great, God will always protect us. But Jeremiah insisted judgment is coming. And then judgment came. The empire of Babylon conquered Judah. They laid siege to Jerusalem. They overcame the city, carried the king and the leaders off into exile, and they installed the king's uncle as the new ruler of what was now the Babylonian province of Judah, a man who took the name Zedekiah. So it's about 10 years after that we get this reading for today, because after a few years, Zedekiah began to believe that, this nation could be his alone. Judah could be independent once more. There's no way God would allow his chosen people to be defeated, no matter the sins we may have engaged in. And so Zedekiah rebelled, which triggered once more the response of the Babylonian Empire, who returned to lay siege to Jerusalem again. And so Jeremiah told the people, listen, the Babylonians are God's instrument of judgment. You should lay down your arms and surrender. Once more, not the most popular message. One that actually got Jeremiah arrested, and they confined him in the palace so that no one could hear what he was saying anymore. It's in that context that our reading for today occurs. When Jeremiah's cousin Hanamel comes to him, because Hanamel's about to lose his ancestral land. The war has wrought havoc on the economy, as you would expect. But the loss of ancestral land is the most profound loss a family can suffer in an agrarian society like ancient Israel. That's why there's this provision in Leviticus 25. If any one of your kin falls into difficulty and sells a piece of property, the next of kin shall come and redeem what the relative has sold. So Hanamel asks Jeremiah to buy his ancestral land to protect his family and his children so that they'll have something after all of this is done. And Jeremiah says yes. He makes the arrangements and buys the field. But his purchase of the field is so much more than just helping his cousin out. It is truly a prophetic, symbolic action. I mean, after all, who in the world would want to purchase a field in a country that's about to be conquered? This is not a good investment strategy. And that's why Jeremiah goes at length to ensure that the purchase is public, even though he's confined in prison, to ensure that everyone knows what he has done. It's not that Jeremiah wants credit for being generous. He wants the people to know that no matter the destruction around them, he has faith that God's forgiveness will still come, that God will eventually return God's people to this land, that fields will be bought, vineyards sold, that the punishment of today does not mean the end of tomorrow. And so this exchange of deed takes place in the presence of the Judeans sitting in the court of the guard. In their presence, Jeremiah transfers the deed, has one copy placed in an earthenware jar so that it may last until the time of the people's return from exile. Such a prophetic action would surely trigger rumors and whispers among the Judean people about this crazy prophet buying up bad titles. Now, if you're not quite yet seeing the profound hopefulness of Jeremiah's action, think of it this way. 7 months ago, yesterday, Russia invaded Ukraine. Can you imagine if, with the Russian troops advancing, conquering whole swaths of eastern Ukraine, someone went out and bought property right in front of the advancing army, confident that this land would remain theirs no matter the evil that advanced. They buy the property so that when Russia is finally defeated and retreats, they can claim it for their family, build a new future no matter the destruction of today. That's the hope Jeremiah has. And some days I don't know where that kind of faith, that kind of hope in the future comes from. Because sometimes I feel like the people of the first century listening to John of Patmos talk about how God's love will win. And I don't know if John's crazy or not. I don't know if Jeremiah is crazy or not. I mean, hatred, division, corruption, discrimination, they all just seem to rise all around us. The powers of this world advance and seek to destroy the people of God, to trample upon the marginalized in order to squeeze just a little more profit out of them before they're discarded on the churning wheels of the system. It's hard to hope sometimes in a world like this. I mean, the church itself, the church continues to shrink in this world. And that contraction of the church has been going on for a long time. In the 1960s, at the height of our size, the Episcopal Church had about 3.5 million members. The Episcopal Church was about 2% of the population of this country. Our church is down now to 1.8 million members, just a little more than half what we were 50, 60 years ago. Instead of being 2% of the country's population, we're now less than 0.5%. And it's not just our denomination, right? I mean, in the 60s, around 90% of all Americans professed some form of Christianity. That's down to 63%, less than 2/3. In the past 10 years, since I've been here in our diocesan average attendance on Sundays has decreased 25%. That's before the COVID pandemic. Not even considering the numbers now. But I'll be honest with you. I feel a little bit like Jeremiah. Though it seems like the decline of Christianity, the decline of the Episcopal Church seems inevitable, I remain rather bullish on the subject. Don't get me wrong, I think some of the decline we've experienced in American Christianity has been God's judgment on us. God's judgment on a Christianity that was more concerned with power and prestige than it was with what God called us to be and to do. What Micah said we're supposed to do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. Church hasn't been interested in that for a while, it seems. But I think God's at work even now, even right here at St. John's, seeking to rebuild a new way of being church, a new way of embodying God's love to a broken and hurting world. And so I'll buy that piece of property. When my family turned in our pledge card a couple weeks ago, committing 10% of our household income to the work of God in this world, we did that with full confidence and faith that the best days of the church are ahead of us. I know turning in a pledge card seems rather mundane, but so does a real estate transaction. Until you realize the context. How even something as simple as turning in a pledge card can be a prophetic and symbolic act, a commitment not only to hope in a certain future, but to be a part of making that future happen. Even something as small as turning in a pledge card can be one small blow against the powers of darkness in this world, saying, I will join St. Michael and his angels in fighting against that. But don't stop there. Don't stop there, beloved of God. Don't just turn in a card. Look around you. Look at all that dismays and robs you of your joy, robs you of your hope. And ask what concrete thing you can do as a statement of trust in God's goodness. What single act of kindness or justice can you do in full view of others as your own proclamation that God's love will triumph in the end? Because sure, it might just be a small blow against the powers of darkness, but who knows? Your small act might be the blow that breaks the wall so that light can finally come in. Amen.